Hello dear teachers. Today's video is about a topic that we all hate. Actually, it's not just we hate, it is just exhausting to think about. Today's video is about preparing or making exams. Most of students think that teachers are satisfied with making exams and their thirst of torturing others is quenched when they prepare a difficult exam. Well, actually, as teachers, we can share that this is not our favorite part of the job. It is difficult, it is hectic, and it takes a lot of time on preparing the test, on correcting the test, on analyzing the results, and it is all hectic, simply. So, but still, exams are very important, even though we try to avoid them as much as possible. But it shows that how good teacher you are. It's not just about studying the results of your students. It is also about, let's say, testing or evaluating your way of teaching. The results of your efforts are explained, are shown, are reflected in the results of your students. And in order to prepare a good exam, a good high quality exam, I think we need to follow some steps. The first step we need to start with before starting with the exam is to set a purpose for your exam. Why are you preparing this exam? Is it to evaluate your students? Is it to test or to measure the acquisition of an objective? Is it to diagnose the level of your students to know what to concentrate on, what to highlight, what to let's give less attention to, and etc. etc. There are lots of reasons. And let me tell you something that when you put a reason for your exam, then you are going to search for something in the results. If your exam has no clear specific reason, then the results will be meaningless, because the results are the data that you need to analyze in order to serve the purpose of your exam. The second step, after setting a purpose, we are still before preparing the questions. Till now, we haven't prepared the questions yet. Before preparing the questions, there's a second step, which is determining the objectives that your test is measuring. Determining the objectives is not just checking the list. Okay, I have taught 4 objectives and I need to test them. It's not just that. There is something more. When you determine the objectives, you also study the way of acquiring those objectives. We talked before that students or any other person acquire knowledge in different levels according to Bloom's taxonomy. And there are 3 levels of thinking: low, middle, and high levels of thinking. So if I am giving, or if I know that my students acquire an objective in different levels, so my questions also must follow different levels, must tackle different levels in order to test how truly that objective was acquired, was mastered. So I also must pay attention to Bloom's taxonomy, which means I have a flow of steps or a flow of phases I need to concentrate on. For example, Bloom's taxonomy has 6 main phases, according to 3 levels of thinking. And my question must tackle those phases to know how deeply my students acquire that knowledge. I will take math as an example. If I'm preparing a math test, the first part of the type of questions that I must discuss is remembering questions. It's a low level of thinking, remembering. So I would ask the students to retell, to write the text of a theory which is purely remembered. It doesn't show that he understands or he is able to apply it, but it shows that he memorized it. The second part is understanding. The second phase is understanding. If I want to test the student's ability to change the formula of the elements of a problem, this shows understanding to the process of changing. Third one is application, to ask students to solve routine math problems. It shows the application phase. Analyzing. For example, I give a student a new problem that was simulated in another way. So the students will relate his previous knowledge of solving a similar exercise and try to solve this new exercise in the same way. Evaluating is to ask students to build their own judgment, and creating is to ask students to give a new situation, new answer, create something from the nothing, from the zero, from the scratch, to give something new is by creating. So those are the phases of Bloom's taxonomy, and we know them, and we must prepare our tests. We must know how to ask about those phases in our test. The third step after setting a purpose, after determining the objectives, is to start building questions. And in building questions, I want to highlight 3 points. The first point is that I must know the list of required objectives that I want to ask my students about, and my test must cover them all. That's first. The second one is the rate of distribution. I will give an example to make it easier. The rate of distribution, if for example I'm giving a test after a month, which means 4 weeks. 4 weeks of teaching, I taught 4 objectives. If each objective took a week of teaching, then my test must be 25% divided to 4 parts, which means each objective will take 25% of the questions of the test. If, for example, one objective is longer than the others and it took more time, for example, 2 weeks to be taught, then this objective must be covered in 50% of the questions in that exam. And the rest of the exam must cover the rest of the objectives according to the time they took in order to be explained and practiced and applied, etc., etc. So the rate of distribution must be taken in consideration. The third thing, which is Bloom's taxonomy, we talked about that. The test of objectives must cover each level of thinking. How? What are the kinds of questions for each type of thinking? Actually, there are 3 types of questions my test must cover, which are first closed or direct questions, analytical questions, and open questions. What are the differences? Closed questions are limited, short, defined answers. They only have one answer. There is only one accurate, direct answer for that question. For example, if I ask, what is the hair color, or the color of the hair of this character? It is clear, it's obvious. There is nothing to discuss. 1 + 1 = 2. There is no other answer for that, let's say directly speaking. The second type of question, which is analytical questions, in that situation, I must know the ability of the students to relate something he knew with a new situation and know how to interact with that new situation according to a previous knowledge. The third part is open questions. Open questions are the opposite of direct questions. They don't have one answer. Answers vary according to the student's experience and point of view. I might ask, what is your opinion about? Or I might ask, what would change if? Or what if? Or etc. Those questions, each student has his own way, his own answer, and the only criteria that must be followed in order to check this answer is logic. That's it. If the student was logical with the answer, he must take the mark, and this when we tackle creativity in his mind. My note is to pay extra attention to the question words that you use, because question words are a separated knowledge, is a separated research, is a very wide sea of knowledge. I couldn't actually fit in short video. It is very important and very, very specific, sophisticated art. Maybe science teachers are best in that part because they know each word lead to different type of answers. The fourth step comes after preparing the questions, which is preparing an answer key. You must prepare an answer key, and my advice to you to prepare an answer key a day or 2 after preparing the questions. This will give you time to relax and to rest. Your answer key must be accurate, must be clear, it must be the marks must be fairly divided according to the parts of the question. It is known for teachers as far as that. What are the qualities of a good test? And I will end my video with that. The good test must be objective. The objectivity is one of the quality. It's not about your feelings. If you hate your students or They actually troublemakers. Let's give them hard tests to that. No, it must be objective. It must be honest. Be honest with yourself. Serve the reason why you put this test. The third part is it should show the difference in levels between high achievers and middle low achievers. Diversity is another equality. So the question must differ from one question to another. You must cover more than one type of questions. Inclusivity. You must cover all the objectives that you have taught according to that test. And the last quality is the technical direction of the test. It must, the font size, the design according to the age of the students, it all must be taken in consideration. Thank you so much. That's all about building a test. I know practically it is something must be taught practically, not theoretically, but we can share. Be aware to share your experience with building tests, and I hope you find this interesting. Thank you very much.